Chapter 41. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Like everyone figured, a green monk, no fight experience, just relying on his chi, wasn't gonna beat a master. And with all those soldiers swarming the field, pretty soon, blood started seeping out of the little monk, staining his robe a weird red. From a distance, it looked like a wedding dress, or something. Even staring down a master, the little monk's face stayed the same. He just kept defending, like a robot. But here's the crazy part, even as the fight dragged on, and the little monk should have been getting weaker, he started picking up some of Emperor Ning's moves by instinct. That's when Emperor Ning freaked. At first, he was stoked to take down this punk monk and thought he would kill him fast. But after a while, Emperor Ning changed his tune quick. This little monk was learning way too fast. He'd figure out a move, memorize it instantly, then throw it right back. Emperor Ning felt like he was fighting his own reflection. Every move he threw, the little monk would copy and use against him the next second. It was messed up. What the hell are you? The little monk, covered in blood, just kept focusing his chi and fighting. Emperor Ning lost it, fear taking over, and he yelled. But the little monk didn't even flinch. He was like a man possessed, his robe a bloody mess. He mixed and matched Emperor Ning's moves like he invented them. Kill him for me. Emperor Ning, seeing the little monk coming at him, gave up on one-on-one and screamed at his soldiers. Whoosh, star. At Emperor Ning's shout, a stray arrow zipped through the air, then, a whole storm of them came down. Chapter 48, Is the Little Monk Crazy? The possibility of resurrection from the dead. The arrows rained down. At that range, even a master would get hurt without a chi shield, and if he used chi to block, Emperor Ning would jump at the chance to strike. Dead end. The little monk was cornered. Truth was, nobody thought this backwater Ning kingdom had a master in the first place. Otherwise, the little monk would have mopped the floor with them. Now, he had to play defense. Everyone in Jojo figured the little monk would back off for now. They all saw his crazy skills. He could just find a technique and practice it for a couple weeks, and he'd walk all over Emperor Ning. Boom, star. Just when everyone thought that was gonna happen, the golden list flashed. Then, everyone saw something they'd never forget. Arrows flying, the little monk stepped forward, heading right for Emperor Ning. An arrow flew past, and even though the monk's chi blocked it, blood still splattered, but the little monk didn't even notice. He kept moving, got up close to Emperor Ning, and reached out a hand. Boom! Black chi exploded everywhere, slamming into Emperor Ning in seconds, even through the arrows. Then, that chi unleashed, full force. Emperor Ning was stunned, tried to block, but was already tangled up and couldn't move. That's when the little monk's hand closed around Emperor Ning's neck, and he squeezed. Crack! A bone snapped, echoing out. A master, done. Everyone across Jojo gasped. Nobody thought it would end like this for someone so strong. Killed by a little monk who was ringing bells and chanting just days ago. It was sad, really, but it showed how powerful this little monk really was. He just turned master and took down a seasoned pro. That's enough to get everyone's attention in Jojo. Qin, Yingyun watched the golden list, silent. From bell-ringing monk to this, it was unbelievable. If this kid wasn't Buddhist, or if that prince didn't go after a shio, maybe, the little monk would still be hitting that would block at Qinshan Temple, hearing stories from that pretty girl. Too bad, all that's gone. The golden list kept going. Emperor Ning was toast, and the soldiers scattered like cockroaches. The street was empty, just corpses and the little monk staring at his bloody hands, not saying a word. Boom, star. More thunder rolled in. Midsummer storms always come quick. Rain poured down, washing away the blood. People in Ningwa peeked out, then hid, scared to death of the little monk. They didn't know the story, they just saw this monk show up and start a massacre. He was a devil. The real deal. Then, watching the little monk standing in the rain, all confused, some people started throwing rotten veggies, then more and more. The little monk didn't move, and his chi blocked all the garbage. But that's when people realized he wasn't even trying to stop them, so they got bolder. Rotten vegetables, eggs, the whole works. They even trashed Emperor Ning and the prince's bodies, making a stink. An old woman hobbled out and started beating the little monk with her cane, but how's a regular stick gonna hurt a master's body? If the little monk hadn't held back his chi, she would have died on the spot. Amitabha. The little monk snapped out of it, looked at the old woman, clasped his hands, whispered a Buddhist prayer, and walked away. Everyone thought of that monk back at Qin Shan Temple, not caring about fame, just ringing the bell and praying, but his bloody robe brought them back to reality. No going back now. Jojo was quiet. Nobody thought true love would end like that. Just when everyone was feeling bad for the monk and the girl, the picture changed again, and they were scratching their heads. The little monk snapped. The picture showed the little monk again. His bloody robe was torn to shreds, covered in mud. If everyone hadn't seen him grow up and remembered his face, nobody would have recognized him, and he was different. His clothes were a mess, and he kept laughing like a lunatic, like a mad monk. This little monk was a master. He was destined for greatness. But he just lost it. Dachin. Looks like Miss Xiu's death hit him hard. Yingyun looked up, sighed, and said. Master Yingyun, only he knows the pain. Yingyun believed it. Chapter 42. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If he had a choice, that young monk would have ditched the master-level cultivation in a heartbeat just to bring that beautiful girl back to life. But, come on, really? So, drowning in regret, the young monk went nuts, maybe to escape, maybe for some other reason. Resurrection? Yingyun thought about it, startled, and reflexively glanced up at the sky. In the old days, bringing someone back from the dead was pure fantasy. But with the Tiandao golden list in the picture, it, maybe wasn't so impossible. The brave god Ho Zhu didn't just resurrect Su Xian. Chapter 49, God's Blessing. Showgirl coming back from the dead. Resurrection. All over Kyushu, people reacted. Everyone was in shock. If this had happened before, people might have felt sorry for the young monk and his pain, but that's as far as it went. After all, once the girl's gone, what's the point of all the regrets? But now it was different. After Zhu Wuxi's resurrection of Su Xian, death didn't seem so final anymore. Plus, the Tiandao golden list had only shown us the tip of the iceberg. Who knows what kind of powers it really held? But one thing was for sure, bringing back the dead didn't seem out of reach anymore. Shaolin Temple, the sweeping monk's eyes flashed, and his calm face twitched. A great master's aura exploded from him. Shaolin was shaken to its core. The monks felt their minds reeling, some nearly collapsed. Great master. At that moment, they truly understood what great master meant. Zhang Sanfeng, even when he fought, used a gentle approach. So, even with the golden list, people in Kyushu couldn't fully grasp how powerful a grand master really was. But the sweeping monk was different. His aura was overwhelming, almost obliterating everything. Even a trace of it was enough to send Shaolin into a panic. Amitabha. Seeing the monk swaying before him, the sweeping monk clasped his hands, chanted a Buddhist prayer, and said calmly, "Forgive this poor monk's rudeness," that he wasn't like Zhang Sanfeng. Young Zhang Junbao fell for Guoxiang the moment they met, but even after they parted, they had chances to meet again. Guoxiang never married. They never met again because they chose not to, but the sweeping monk's story was different. His greatest regret was that girl who asked him to tell her a story. Taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and Miss Xiu. He had spent the first half of his life chanting sutras and achieving enlightenment. But he forgot. Axiu was waiting for him. By the time he wanted to turn back, it was too late. So, if there was hope, he'd pay any price for that fourth refuge. The Tiandao golden list continued. The crazy monk traveled far and wide, through Qin, Han, Tang, Song, Ming. He left his mark on almost every dynasty. Despite his madness, he still had a compassionate heart. He helped people wherever he went. No one knew his name. They only knew the crazy monk with the wine gourd who didn't care about Buddhist rules. So, they called him a crazy monk. He didn't argue. He did what he wanted. After decades of being a crazy monk, his cultivation had reached an insane level. Finally, on a stormy night, amidst thunder and lightning, he broke through to Grandmaster. It was all meant to be. After decades of accumulation, the breakthrough from Grandmaster to Great Grandmaster was natural. Then, the newly minted Grandmaster found a corner, huddled up, and fell asleep. The storm passed, more people walked the streets, they passed him by, barely noticing him. Some, who were skilled in martial arts, hurried past. None of them knew that nearby, the sleeping monk was a great master. The screen cut out. Why he ended up at Shaolin Temple, why he hid in the Sutra Pavilion for 40 years, no one knew. Maybe he was crazy from exhaustion. Or tired of the world and wanted a quiet place to spend his remaining years. Only he knew the truth. De Qin. A tragic fate for a great master. Yingyun watched the picture fade and sighed. Who would have thought that the gifted young monk would endure such a life? Fate was cruel. I wonder if the Tiandao Jinbang will revive Xiu. Gai Nie frowned. Unlike Su Xian, Xiu had been buried for years. Could she even be revived? Everyone was stunned, and a look of contemplation appeared on their faces. Right. Su Xian had been preserved by the Tianxiang Duku and frozen on Tianshan Mountain by Zhu Wuxi. She hadn't really died. But Xiu had. She was just a mound under a green hill. And time had passed. Even if Miss Xiu was resurrected, what would happen to the old monk, facing all the unfamiliar things? Silence fell. Even if the heavenly Tao Golden List could bring her back, would Miss Xiu be happy in a world that didn't belong to her? Shaolin Temple, the sweeping monk had the same thought, and then, he froze. He was a grandmaster now. He could protect her. But could he even face her? Subconsciously, he touched his face, one he hadn't cared about for years, and was startled. Was he even worthy? The sweeping monk was lost. Boom! Endless golden light filled the sky, descending with a vast presence. Heavenly Tao blessing. Kyushu was shocked. It was too familiar. Wasn't this God's blessing? But everyone was curious, what kind of blessing would it be? Would it resurrect Xiu? And if it did, how could she handle it? Chapter 50, Traveling Through Time and Space. The Sweeping Monk's Choice. Under Qingshan Temple, love begins and ends. One thought becomes a Buddha, one thought turns into a demon. Sweeping Monk. Ranked 5th on the Peerless list. Chapter 43. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Heaven's gonna bless somebody. The booming voice echoed across the sky, resonating in the sweeping monk's ears. It reverberated throughout the entire land of Kyushu. A blessing from heaven? Seriously? Every eye in Kyushu turned skyward, waiting with bated breath. People had been jealous of the heavenly blessings before. Everyone knew they could right past wrongs, a massive opportunity for the recipient. Guys like Gai Nie and Zhu Wuwu had already benefited. But this time felt different. Everyone knew the sweeping monk's biggest regret was that woman from over a century ago, the girl named Xiu. But would she come back? And if she did, how would she react to the scrawny old man he had become? Boom! Just as everyone in Kyushu was holding their breath, a massive wave of golden light, carrying incredible force, slammed down on Shaolin, sending ripples through the air. At the same time, the voice of heaven echoed again in everyone's ears, heaven's blessing. 1. 1,000 years of life. 2. Buddhism's ultimate mental techniques and martial arts. 3. The immortal golden body. The emotionless voice boomed from above. This heavenly reward was still enough to make anyone's heart race. 1,000 years of life was a no-brainer. Nobody knew exactly what Buddhism's ultimate mental methods and martial arts were, but the description alone made it sound like an unimaginable treasure. And the immortal golden body? The word immortal says it all. But what about Xiu? When Zhang Sanfeng got his blessing, Guoxiang didn't come up because he had moved on. He and Guoxiang had been watching each other from afar for decades. For them, seeing each other again would be worse than letting things be. So, Zhang Sanfeng's blessing mainly benefited his Wudang disciples. The entire Wudang sect got a huge boost. But this monk? Had everyone misjudged him? Had wandering Kyushu all these years made him forget the beautiful girl he once knew? He'd taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and that's it? Was this monk heartless? The Kyushu continent erupted. Could this monk, who seemed so full of love, really be like this? Shaolin Temple, the sweeping monk was stunned. The echoes of the heavenly Tao golden list filled his ears, but the rewards, enough to drive even a grand master crazy, meant nothing to him. This wasn't what he wanted. He just wanted Shio back. Heaven's blessing. Optional. Travel through time and space once. Note, time and space are fickle. Choose wisely. Warning. If you choose to travel through time and space, you will forfeit all other rewards. If you choose to travel through time and space, you cannot deliberately alter the course of history, or you will be obliterated. If you choose to travel through time and space, you cannot tell anyone about the future, or you will be obliterated. Just when everyone was shocked, the voice of heaven echoed again. Then, everyone was floored. You could choose your heavenly blessing. And, time travel. Resurrection had already pushed the boundaries of what everyone could imagine. Now time travel blew everyone's minds. Going back in time. What kind of power was that? The Qin. How is this even possible? Yingyun looked up, his face a mask of shock and horror. Unbelievable. How could anyone change time and space? Heavenly Tao Golden List. Even Yingyun, who usually ignored the Golden List, looked astonished. He paused, then smiled. Looks like we underestimated it. He hadn't dismissed the heavenly blessings, but they weren't exactly useful to him. His daily sign-ins already gave him rewards on that level. But now, this time travel thing had his full attention. Was it really the will of heaven? How else could it hand out a reward like crossing time and space? Big Han, Lu Bang's eyes were dark as he watched the image on the heavenly Tao Golden List, clenching his fists, he couldn't believe it. Was time travel real? Qin Dynasty, Li Shimin was silent, clearly stunned by the heavenly blessing. Daming, Song Dynasty, everyone was speechless. They had been talking about what would happen after Shio was resurrected. Nobody expected this. What would the sweeping monk choose? Traveling through time wasn't smart for a grand master. The restrictions made obliteration way too easy. And after choosing time travel, he could lose his entire cultivation. He'd have to start all over. Even if this monk was a genius, being reborn wouldn't guarantee that he would accomplish what he has today. Plus, choosing time travel meant forfeiting his heavenly blessing. The longevity, the mental discipline, the golden body, all things people dream of. Would he really give it all up? Just when everyone was second-guessing, they suddenly saw the heavenly Tao Golden List. The scene had switched to the sweeping monk. At the Shaolin Temple, the monk looked calm, hands clasped together. He seemed to see all the people of Kyushu through the Golden List, and slowly chanted a Buddhist prayer. Amitba, he was calm, no longer angry, just like the young monk who used to ring the bell and chant at the Qingshan Temple. The sweeping monk looked down at the Shaolin monks and said softly. I've hidden in Shaolin for so long without paying my dues. My simple annotations on the Buddhist scriptures are where I usually sit, and everyone can have them. He bowed lightly to them again, then looked towards the heavenly blessing. He chose time travel. Boom! Light burst out, and the void trembled as space warped and time rippled. The sweeping monk slowly vanished into the light. Chapter 44. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Edited content. Chapter 51, Perfect Ending. The number 4 on the Peerless list. The sweeping monk vanished in the drizzling rain, unexpected, yet somehow fitting. It's hard not to notice that the young monk from before and the sweeping monk of today are one and the same. The four refuges. Refuge in Buddha, refuge in Dharma, refuge in Sangha, refuge in Miss Shio. The story of the four refuges finally reaches its satisfying conclusion. Qin. So, he chose this path in the end. Watching the sweeping monk dissolve into light rain, Yingyun's eyes flickered, and he sighed softly. The world has lost a grandmaster, but gained back a young monk. Not bad. Yingyun was grateful for the sweeping monk's experience. This ending truly made amends for the young monk's regrets. Suddenly, Yingyun looked up, his gaze drawn to the void. The image was shifting, as if it was about to show another scene. Could it be the fourth entry on the peerless list? No. Something's off. One glance was enough. Yingyun was stunned. The picture showed a scene he knew all too well. Qingshan Temple. In fact, countless dynasties across Kyushu were witnessing the very same image from the Heavenly Tao Golden List. And they were all in shock. Qingshan Temple. Staring at the small temple, everyone's eyes widened, and they saw a faint figure of a young monk striking a wooden fish, thwack. As if in response to their expectations, the picture shifted slightly, revealing a handsome young monk standing within the small temple. Looking closer, this young monk had a hint of weariness in his eyes, and looked somewhat surprised. After a moment, he composed himself, bowing slightly in a Buddhist gesture. Amitabha, that the soft voice escaped the young monk's lips, even though he did nothing else. Just from that Buddhist chant, everyone in Jojo knew that he had to be the sweeping monk. Had he truly traveled through time? If anyone still doubted the Heavenly Tao Golden List before, that last shred of doubt was now gone. The Heavenly Tao Golden List was truly as powerful as legends claimed. Little monk. I'm back to hear another one of your stories. Little monk. Open the door. Little monk. Just as everyone was reeling from the shock, the picture shifted, and a delicate voice rang out, drawing closer, click. The next moment, the temple door swung open, and a sweet-faced girl cautiously stepped inside. She seemed slightly out of breath from evading the old monk's pursuit. Her light blue dress was slightly disheveled, and a breeze gently tousled her hair, creating a sense of tranquility. For a moment, the young monk was speechless. He'd seen this scene countless times in his dreams, but, when he awoke, it was always empty. But now, it seemed to be real. Little monk. Little monk. Little monk. Seeing the dazed young monk, the girl seemed a little annoyed, pouting as she called out. If you don't answer, I'm leaving. That the girl was a little put out. She had finally managed to sneak away from her father, and avoid a bunch of old monks in Qingshan Temple to come here, but she saw that the young monk was staring off into space, and ignored her completely. Well, it was almost like a piece of wood. It was really annoying. I. Seeing the girl about to leave, the young monk snapped back to reality, took a step forward, but then froze, feeling awkward. At this moment, he didn't resemble the sweeping monk of Shaolin Temple who faced everything with serene indifference. Instead, he looked more like the young monk from Qingshan Temple of days long gone. Time had passed, but it never managed to erase his innocent heart. Pucci. Seeing the young monk's silly expression, the girl giggled, her feigned anger melting away. She said to the young monk. Little monk, you just had to zone out and make me mad. I'm going to punish you. Tell me a story. The girl's eyes sparkled with anticipation. After all, this little monk has read the Buddhist scriptures and knows a lot of little stories. Very interesting. However, the little monk only knew how to recite his Buddhist scriptures and rarely told her stories. This time, the girl knew that the little monk would probably refuse by reciting Buddhist scriptures again. Okay. Much to the girl's surprise, the young monk was caught off guard by this request, then smiled and nodded, and said. I'll tell you a story about the four refuges. Four refuges. Hearing this, the girl was slightly taken aback, a hint of confusion crossing her face, as she asked. What are the four refuges? The four refuges. How come she's never heard of them? Once upon a time, there was an old monk. Hearing this, the young monk smiled, looked at the girl's face, and said seriously. He was always being robbed. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. One day, the thief came again, and he said to the thief, "Please put your hand in through the crack of the door, and I will give you whatever you want." The thief was very happy to hear that, so he put his hand in through the crack of the door. Unexpectedly, the old monk grabbed his hand, tied it to the pillar, and then beat him with a stick. While beating him, he shouted, "Refuge in Buddha. Refuge in Dharma. Refuge in Sangha. Refuge." Speaking of this, the young monk paused slightly, his eyes fell on the girl, took a deep breath, and spoke word by word. Refuge. Shil girl, that the breeze gently caressed the girl's hair and gently brushed across her slightly red cheeks, the picture then cut off. Jojo, at this moment, silence reigned supreme. The young monk's love was finally fulfilled. Although, a great master of a generation disappeared from the land of Jojo. But, thinking carefully, it is not a bad thing. After all, no matter which side the Grandmaster leans towards, it is unacceptable to other dynasties. At this point, the most important thing for the major dynasties is no longer to fight for the Grandmaster level, but to prevent the Grandmaster from being snatched away by their hostile countries. Otherwise, it will be an unimaginable disaster for their own dynasty. Even the Supreme Dynasty dare not be careless about this. Although they have the strength to fear no Grandmaster, how can such an existence that can be called foundation be obtained by other Supreme Dynasties? Next, is it the fourth on the peerless list? At this moment, the eyes of countless dynasties fell on the Heavenly Tao Golden List. The sixth and fifth on the peerless list are all Grandmasters, incredibly strong. Then, how terrifying will it be to surpass them in the ranking? What kind of existence will he be? Chapter 52, an existence that has lived for 2,000 years. Emperor Shi Tian, the little monk has finally come to an end. It is really admirable that a great master of his generation chose to give up everything. However, this is also a perfect ending. After all, the boy saw the girl again. Boom. Chapter 45. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as all sorts of thoughts raced through everyone's minds, the Heavenly Tao Golden List rippled once more, showing fleeting scenes of mountains, rivers, trees, and other mysterious places. Was the number 4 on the peerless list about to appear? All of Jojo was buzzing with anticipation. Everyone knew the peerless list would only get more impressive as it went on. The sweeping monk might not have displayed overwhelming power, but he'd been hidden away in Shaolin Temple for 40 years without anyone noticing. That alone proved his strength. So how formidable would the fourth-ranked individual be? As everyone watched intently, the Heavenly Tao Golden List's image became clearer. It gradually resolved into a mountain range stretching as far as the eye could see, with a grand hall at its base. A golden plaque hung above the hall, emblazoned with the words Tianmen in an ornate, flowing script, Tianmen. What was Tianmen? Legend had it, climb it, and you could become an immortal. Seeing this, all of Jojo was in shock. The inscription Tianmen on the plaque implied that the fourth-place contender was an existence beyond comprehension. As the picture stabilized, the Heavenly Tao Golden List's booming voice echoed throughout Jojo. The fourth on the peerless list, Emperor Shi Tian, realm, Grandmaster. Achievement, slew a phoenix. The booming pronouncement lingered, leaving everyone speechless. The fourth spot belonging to a Grandmaster wasn't a surprise. After all, Zhang Sanfeng and the sweeping monk were at that level, and Emperor Shi Tian should be at least their equal. But the achievement, slew a phoenix. Phoenixes were real. Hearing this, Jojo erupted. Mythical creatures actually existed, and Emperor Shi Tian had killed one. How could that be? Qin, silence fell over the Zhongtai Palace. Are phoenixes actually real? Dingzheng paused, a shadow of seriousness crossing his face. Phoenixes. They were only mentioned in ancient texts and myths. They were seen as symbols of good fortune. Smaller dynasties even worshipped them as totems. But throughout JoJo, almost everyone thought phoenixes were just legends. Now, the Heavenly Tao Golden List had confirmed their existence. How could that not be shocking? Phoenix, Guy Nye was equally stunned. After a moment, he added. If there are phoenixes, does that mean there are real dragons? Dragons and phoenixes went hand in hand as symbols of good luck. They were inseparable in myths and legends. If the Heavenly Tao Golden List confirmed the existence of phoenixes, would there be real dragons? Whoa! Realizing this, even the seasoned civil and military officials gasped. This was too much. It completely turned JoJo's understanding of the world on its head. Phoenixes. At the same time, other dynasties in JoJo were thrown into chaos. Even the mere mention of Phoenix was enough to rattle everyone. And they were desperate to know, who was this Emperor Shirtian? How could he kill a phoenix? As JoJo descended into madness, Emperor Shirtian opened his eyes within the Tianmen. Boom! The Holy Heart Sutra surged, threatening to destroy everything. How can this be? Emperor Shirtian shot to his feet, glaring at the Heavenly Tao Golden List. I've lived for 2,000 years, and my cultivation is unparalleled. I'm invincible in every age. How could I only rank 4th on the Peerless list? Emperor Shirtian was furious. He had consumed phoenix blood and lived for over 2,000 years. He was practically immortal. How could his strength only put him at number 4? Was this some kind of joke? 2,000 years. Emperor Shirtian's outburst was broadcast to all of JoJo via the Heavenly Tao Golden List. Everyone was dumbfounded. Zhang Sanfeng's 100 or 200 years of life was already shocking. This guy had lived for 2,000. And that wasn't a reward from the Heavenly Tao Golden List. He'd done it on his own. What kind of monster was this? No one knew how to react. How terrifying would a being who had lived for 2,000 years be? Was he even human anymore? Watching Emperor Shirtian on the screen, a chill ran through JoJo. This couldn't be called a human, right? Come on. What human could live for 2,000 years? Humph! Realizing his every move was being watched, Emperor Shirtian scoffed and casually waved his hand, restoring the chair he had destroyed. Then, he slowly sat down, looked indifferently at the Heavenly Tao Golden List, and fell silent. He was unhappy with the Peerless list. But he also knew the Gold List was rarely wrong. Now, Emperor Shirtian had only one thought in mind: when the top 3 on the list were revealed, he would seek them out for a good fight. That way, he could vent his anger. And break the monotony of his 2,000-year existence. JoJo, seeing Emperor Shirtian regain his composure, everyone's heart skipped a beat. They studied his strange white mask and fell into thought: he'd lived for 2,000 years and was still a grandmaster. You'd think he'd be famous throughout JoJo. But after racking their brains, no one recognized this Emperor Shirtian. It was as if he didn't exist. And no one knew anything about Tianmen. Investigate. The emperors of countless dynasties across JoJo issued the same order. Find everything out about Tianmen. Even from this brief glimpse, everyone in JoJo knew that Emperor Shirtian wasn't indifferent to fame like Zhang Sanfeng, nor would he give up everything for love like the sweeping monk. This guy cared about his status and rank. Why he was hiding was a mystery. But with someone that ambitious, no one could afford to be careless. And most importantly, he'd lived for 2,000 years. Zhang Sanfeng living for hundreds of years could be explained by his grandmaster cultivation. But 2,000 years? Even a grandmaster would be bones by then. Chapter 46. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Among countless changing dynasties were lost to the tides of history. But now, someone's been around for 2,000 years, a living piece of history. The Qin Dynasty. Did this guy really live for 2 millennia? Yingyun was stunned, first a phoenix, now this 2,000-year-old dude. It blew his mind. Plus, Emperor Shirtian didn't even look old. 2,000 years wasn't even his limit. Could immortality actually be real? Longevity. The thought shook even Yingyun to his core. What emperor doesn't want to live forever? Shirtian. Interesting. Yingyun's eyes locked on the screen, a flicker of thought on his face. If he remembered right, Emperor Shirtian's real name was Su Fu, a Qin Dynasty alchemist. But the history of Zhou had gone haywire. Su Fu, the Qin alchemist sent to find the elixir of immortality for Yingyun, who then found the phoenix to become immortal, was actually here. 2,000 years, Yingyun considered Su Fu's past moves and chuckled, interesting. The appearance of Emperor Shirtian meant Zhou was in for some serious drama. Yingyun's curiosity piqued. What kind of beings held the top 3 spots on the peerless list? Even though Tiandao classified Emperor Shirtian as a Grand Master, Yingyun could tell that neither Zhang Sanfeng nor the sweeping monk could take him. Especially against Emperor Shirtian's sacred heart art, which was practically cheating. No way to beat him. If there were levels, this Emperor Shirtian was the peak of Grand Master. The number 4 spot held peak Grand Master power. So, what realm did the 3rd and 2nd spots occupy? Maybe besides himself, a land deity roamed this world. The thought thrilled Yingyun. Everyone says it's lonely at the top. Yingyun didn't really feel that way. But finding a worthy opponent in Kyushu would be amazing. Suddenly, the scene wavered, shifting, Tianmen vanished, replaced by an old village. The customs were different from those in Zhou, the farming methods were ancient. 2,000 years ago. Zhou was shocked. They could see what Kyushu looked like 2 millennia ago. The scene changed again, and a teenage boy appeared. Emperor Shirtian. The name flashed in everyone's mind. The people in the scene called the boy Su Fu. But the Tiandao Golden List was never wrong. This Su Fu was definitely Emperor Shirtian, the 2,000-year-old. Everyone watched Su Fu, eager to learn his secret to long life. But he looked like an ordinary boy. Like young Zhang Sanfeng, he'd missed his chance to become a martial artist. Worse, he had no talent. An injured warrior had stayed in Su Fu's village, recovering at his house. He wasn't strong, only innate at most. Su Fu begged him to teach him a few moves, but failed. The warrior left after healing. His talent was awful. The young Su Fu was mischievous, a cheat, and a prankster. He stole food from neighbors and got beat for it. It was unbelievable. Could this kid, strung up and begging for mercy, really become a Grand Master? The Han Dynasty. He's kind of like me. Lu Bang watched the boy getting beaten and felt a connection. He'd been just as naughty back then. A late bloomer. Lu Bang straightened up. He thought this Emperor Shirtian was like him, a late bloomer. Ha! Lu Bang laughed, feeling good. He'd found a kindred spirit. Everything made sense. Zhang Liang and the others looked at Lu Bang, amused and helpless. His Majesty was remembering his hooligan days. The Ming Dynasty, the Forbidden City. This Emperor Shirtian's pretty interesting. Zhu Yuanzhang watched the boy, a thoughtful expression on his face. Others saw the beating, but Zhu Yuanzhang saw a poor kid, stealing food because he was hungry, and that warrior. The villagers were curious but scared to approach him when they saw the blood. Emperor Shirtian brought him home and begged to learn his tricks. Zhu Yuanzhang, who came from nothing, knew that if Emperor Shirtian had any talent, he could have seized that opportunity and risen to the top. At least, he'd be better off. An innate warrior. Nothing to Zhou, used to Grand Masters and Great Masters. But to a small village, he was invincible. Too bad the kid had no talent. The Tang Dynasty, Li Shimin looked solemn, watching the boy in silence. The Song Dynasty, many emperors saw something different in the young Emperor Shirtian. But it wasn't enough. His talent couldn't make him a Grand Master. And those 2,000 years, they were curious. How did this ordinary, barely smart boy become Emperor Shirtian? Chapter 54 Alchemist. The rise of Su Fu. 2,000 years. Most of Kyushu doubted the incompetent boy. How could he reach that point? As they watched, trying to figure out the truth, Su Fu, let down from his punishment, limped home, his butt hurt from the spanking, but Su Fu acted like nothing was wrong. Jojo better understood Su Fu's character. He was hiding his embarrassment. Su Fu was different. The Tiandao golden list flashed forward, time passed. 3 years went by. The boy was now a young man. Chapter 47. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just like the last few years, he was still just bumming around the village, and people looked down on him. After Su Fu's parents passed away from illness, nobody gave him a second glance. Su Fu didn't sweat it. He just took it easy every day. One day, Su Fu wandered out of the village and overheard some bigwigs in the city talking. Apparently, some kid was thought to be possessed and they were looking to hire a Taoist master to fix things. Suddenly, he was intrigued. Because what the wealthy family was willing to pay the Taoist master was a cool 100 taels of silver. For Su Fu, growing up in a backwater mountain village, 100 taels, that was the stuff of dreams. Even the richest dude in the whole village didn't see more than a tael or two all year. So, purely out of curiosity, Su Fu threw a few things together and hightailed it to the city. Su Fu wasn't planning on becoming a Taoist, not really, he just wanted to see what kind of racket could rake in 100 taels. Su Fu hustled into the city and saw the head of some rich family, banging gongs and blasting horns to draw in a Taoist priest for a consultation, plus, figuring the more people the merrier for an exorcism, he'd invited a bunch of respected citizens to spectate, hoping the evil spirits wouldn't dare show their faces. That's how Su Fu wangled his way in. But, seeing the Taoist priest's exorcism routine, Su Fu just went flat. He lost all interest. It was basically the same stuff he'd messed with as a kid. Chewing on ghost bones, waving swords at demons, sticking his hands in hot oil, he was so over it. So, bored out of his skull, Su Fu was about to split, but then he saw that this Taoist priest circus act was pulling in 100 taels, plus the old man's undying gratitude. Su Fu was speechless. 100 taels of silver. Su Fu swore he'd never laid eyes on so much shiny metal in his life. And this so-called alchemist had just pocketed it. I could do that. The thought hit Su Fu like a lightning bolt. He'd been a loafer since he was a kid, and he'd played every one of those tricks a million times. Watching the alchemist waltz off with 100 taels and a load of thanks, Su Fu realized he was green with envy. Su Fu didn't head back to the village, like he'd planned, figured he had nothing waiting for him there anyway, why not become an alchemist? With that in mind, Su Fu secretly tailed the alchemist. Using the same skills he'd practiced as a kid, he swiped a few alchemist robes and some props, then, he struck out as an alchemist. And wouldn't you know it, he took to it like a duck to water. He didn't just stick to one small kingdom. He made a name for himself all across Kyushu, becoming a VIP guest to all kinds of high rollers. He even got invited to hang out with some emperors, living the high life. From time to time, Su Fu thought about returning home in glory, just to take a gander at the small village he'd left behind, but, after a few years, things had changed there. Nobody even remembered some kid named Su Fu anymore. Even the village chief who used to lay a beating on Su Fu couldn't pick him out of a crowd. He just knelt down, shaking like a leaf, bowing and scraping to this big shot who was so important. Looking down at the village chief kowtowing at his feet, Su Fu just sighed, feeling all kinds of things at once. Finally, he left a pile of gold and silver and turned to leave. The old village chief never figured out that the big man in front of him was the same Su Fu he'd strung up and whacked all those years ago. In the village chief's mind, Su Fu probably died somewhere after leaving the village. How could he compare to this shiny, important guy who even the county magistrate had to suck up to? After going back to the village to pay respects to his parents, Su Fu put all his energy into scamming the emperor. He figured out that, with his current tricks, he could impress the leaders of smaller kingdoms and be treated like a celebrity. But, the bigger and more powerful dynasties wouldn't give him the time of day. So, to climb higher, Su Fu started working on his martial arts. He knew that in Kyushu, your own strength was the only thing that mattered. That's how more than 10 years slipped by in a blur. Using all the dough he'd raked in over the years, Su Fu bought all kinds of rare ingredients and hired famous instructors. Finally, he managed to break into the innate realm. Turns out, Su Fu's talent wasn't exactly world-class. Everyone in Kyushu felt bad when they watched him scarf down those rare ingredients like he had money to burn, give all that stuff to them, and even a halfway decent fighter could make the leap. But Su Fu barely squeaked into the innate realm. That kind of talent was hardly exceptional, and certainly didn't qualify him as a genius. He was, charitably speaking, just average. Su Fu, of course, had no clue that his breakthrough would become a laughingstock for all living beings 2 millennia later. Right now, he was stoked. Because, after breaking into the innate level, he could whip out some fancier tricks. And it wasn't like Su Fu had been slacking off all those years. He'd been deep diving into pharmacology, developing his own unique theories. Under the guise of exorcising evil spirits, he'd actually managed to cure some pretty serious illnesses. And that's how Su Fu went from just another alchemist to an immortal master in everyone's eyes. He even got invited to join the Top Dog Dynasty, the one to beat. Chapter 55 The Elixir of Life. In Zheng's embarrassment, the Top Dynasty. The Great Zhou Dynasty. The scene showed the emperor of the Zhou Dynasty, the Big Kahuna Dynasty, about to receive Su Fu. All of Kyushu was gobsmacked. After 2,000 years of ups and downs, the once unstoppable dynasty had long lost its spark. But, back in the day, the Zhou, they were the giants. Even stronger than the current top dogs. Nobody in Kyushu expected Su Fu, who'd risen through deception and trickery, would get an audience with the Great Zhou. It's immortality. Then, someone spotted the catch, immortality. Turns out Su Fu cooked up a story about immortality pills to get the attention of a powerful dynasty, since the beginning of time, which emperor doesn't want to live forever? 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years later, nada had changed. The only things that changed were the people in charge. And those emperors who chased after immortality? They all bit the dust, and some even crashed their empires in the process. But still, nobody could resist the lure of immortality, especially not those emperors who had all the power and influence. Naturally, that included the leader of the Zhou dynasty, Yingyun. The emperor had entered his sunset years. But, he wasn't ready to check out. Right on cue, Su Fu piped up about being able to cook up an immortality potion, instantly grabbing the dynasty head honcho's attention. So, Su Fu got a personal invite to the Great Zhou dynasty. Su Fu knew his meet and greet with the dynasty was his big shot. If he could pull this off, he'd skyrocket to the top and have more power than he could shake a stick at. Su Fu went wild brewing potions, and with the help of bits and pieces from some old scrolls, he managed to cook up something he called the rejuvenation pill. But everyone in Kyushu who watched Su Fu stir the pot knew that this rejuvenation pill was just a super potent blend of herbs. It wouldn't make you live longer, it would suck the life right out of you, pure and simple. But, because it was a stimulant, popping one made you feel like you'd been struck by lightning and reborn. On top of that, Su Fu slipped in some addictive ingredients into the rejuvenation pill. Seeing this, emperors all over Kyushu hit the roof. Whether it was 2,000 years ago or yesterday, all emperors wanted to live forever. And guys like Su Fu weren't just scamming them back then, but were still being coddled by the emperors of different dynasties. But now, after seeing Su Fu's rejuvenation pill with their own eyes, who could trust those sorcerers? And after a little digging, these emperors realized that the elixirs their own soothsayers were peddling had ingredients similar to Su Fu's, some were even the exact same. Kill them all. Without hesitation, those emperors sent out the hit squads. But, precisely because of this, nobody in Kyushu looked down on Su Fu anymore. Just think, using a few medical books and fragments, he managed to whip up the rejuvenation pill. It was so good that 2,000 years later, alchemists and warlocks were still using his recipe to swindle people. Su Fu was basically the godfather of hucksters. But, just when everyone in Kyushu was processing this, the picture flickered again. Su Fu gained the trust of the Zhou dynasty without breaking a sweat, all thanks to his rejuvenation pill. And he was celebrated as a guest of honor by the Emperor of Zhou. From then on, Su Fu was a new man. Before, he was just another con artist. Even when some dynasties took him seriously, he still managed to rub people the wrong way. But now, with the backing of the Zhou dynasty, nobody dared to disrespect Su Fu. Chapter 48. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Moreover, with the Zhou dynasty's resources flowing freely, some truly rare treasures also found their way to Su Fu, thousand-year-old ginseng. Tianshan snow lotus. Things so precious money couldn't buy them, Su Fu just stockpiled them in a room. He'd casually munch on thousand-year-old ginseng like a carrot, or brew tea with Tianshan snow lotus, the crazy part. After consuming all those natural treasures, Su Fu only managed to reach the second-rate level. That sight made countless warriors lose it. They'd kill to eat even a fraction of what he was wasting. Envy, jealousy, everyone watching Su Fu in the picture now glared daggers. What a waste. Before, when Su Fu broke through to Xiantian, people thought it was excessive. But now, waste didn't even begin to cover it. Su Fu, meanwhile, was living the high life. He even used those resources to create supercharged rejuvenation pills for the Zhou dynasty emperor, just to fuel his treasure hoarding, and the emperor of Zhou was hooked on those Huichun pills, totally beyond help. So, Su Fu got anything he asked for. Qin. You moron. You absolute moron. Yingyun watched the Zhou emperor on screen, his eyes flashing with cold fury, and he muttered under his breath. No wonder the Zhou dynasty is falling apart with a fool like that in charge, that the Zhou dynasty had been declining for ages. Yingyun assumed it was just the natural order of dynasties. But now, it was clear this mediocre leader was ruining the whole country. Infuriating. The emperor of Zhou seems to be chasing the elixir of life, which is why he fell for Su Fu's tricks. Just as Yingyun was about to explode, a quiet voice echoed, Yingyun froze, the elixir of life. Why did that sound so familiar? Then it hit him. Didn't he also used to be obsessed with immortality, sending alchemists and warlocks overseas to find the elixir? But Yingyun, in his usual killjoy way, strongly opposed it. Yingyun had to drop the idea. Well. Yingyun was floored, and a flash of embarrassment crossed his face. Was he basically calling himself out? Ahem. Speechless, Yingyun could only cough awkwardly and keep watching the Dow Golden List. Naturally, the officials didn't dare say a word about it. Everyone was as quiet as mice, not daring to breathe. Heh. Yingyun smirked, yawned, and found a comfortable position to relax. He doubted his father had the nerve to say anything to him now. I'll ignore it. Yingyun watched Yingyun lounging about, veins popping in his forehead, but he took a deep breath. Out of sight, out of mind, he'd suck it up. Chapter 56 Phoenix. The key to longevity. Kyushu shaken, the elixir of life. Above, the pictures continued to roll. The emperor of the Great Zhou, after taking Huizhuan pills for so long, had drained his body's resources, and finally, fell seriously ill. Even Su Fu's upgraded supercharged rejuvenation pill was practically useless. After all, rejuvenation pills just drained the body for a short-term boost. The Zhou emperor was beyond saving. The dying emperor of Zhou remembered the elixir of life that Su Fu had talked about years ago. Su Fu gained favor for claiming he could discover the elixir of immortality. All these years, Su Fu had been relying on the so-called rejuvenation pill and been highly praised, but the princes and nobles of the great Zhou dynasty had forgotten this. But now, the Emperor Zhou was in dire straits and desperately needed the elixir of life. He issued an imperial edict, demanding that Su Fu produce the elixir within 7 days. Or face immediate execution. The picture changed, and everyone saw Su Fu's face again. Now in middle age, Su Fu had successfully become a first-class expert after hoarding countless rare treasures. His first-class status was shaky, built entirely on rare and medicinal materials. But he was, technically, a powerful warrior. Everyone in Kyushu was speechless. Had Su Fu really just spent enough money to drug his way to Grandmaster level? But Su Fu was in a tough spot. Elixir of life. Su Fu, who had been fooling everyone with rejuvenation pills, was out of ideas. Su Fu started to panic. Compared to the Supreme Dynasty, a fake first-class expert stood no chance. If his deception was exposed, the Zhou cavalry would tear him apart. Su Fu was terrified. But the desperate search of ancient texts revealed a creature called Phoenix. Phoenix. Also known as the phoenix bird or fire bird, it's a mythical creature. Rumor had it, it had colorful feathers all over its body, with a swan's head, a unicorn's tail, a snake's neck, a fish's tail, dragon markings, a turtle's back, a chicken's beak, and parallel wings. It was a supreme being. The phoenix sings on that high hill. The phoenix grows in the morning sun. Most importantly, its blood granted immortality. That information was the last straw for Su Fu. He knew he could only survive by finding this phoenix. So, to save his own skin, Su Fu set off to see the Zhou emperor. Although the emperor doubted the existence of the phoenix, he chose to believe Su Fu when he saw his solemn promise, and he sent 100,000 soldiers with Su Fu to find the phoenix. It was stipulated that if Su Fu couldn't find the phoenix within 3 months, the soldiers were free to kill him. 3 months. After negotiating for 3 months, Su Fu was excited. He still didn't dare to be careless. He first spent 7 days gathering all the information about the phoenix, and then took the 100,000 soldiers to the mountains outside of the Great Zhou. The land of Zhou. Seeing Su Fu leading 100,000 soldiers on this expedition, everyone looked serious. They remembered the previous description of the Tiandao Golden List. One of Su Fu's achievements was killing the phoenix. Did phoenixes really exist in Zhou? Moreover, from the ancient books, they knew the effects of phoenix blood, which could grant immortality. This was the most shocking news for Zhou since the start of the Tiandao Golden List, far beyond the existence of the Grand Master. Longevity. Since ancient times, everyone has wanted to live forever. And although the Great Zhou dynasty still collapsed after Su Fu killed the phoenix, Su Fu's 2,000-year lifespan was likely linked to it. Thinking of this, all the dynasties in Kyushu were rocked. Han Dynasty, Changle Palace. Is immortality real? Liu Bang, excited, looked at the picture in the sky, took a deep breath, and roared in a low voice. Liu Bang started an uprising at 48 and became emperor at 54. He built such a supreme dynasty in 6 years. But he was getting old. An emperor in his 50s? A little late. At this time, Liu Bang was jealous, because he was at least 40 years old and ascended the throne to become emperor. Sometimes, he also fantasized about being able to live forever. Chapter 49. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But Liu Bang knew that was impossible. Now, this heavenly Tao Golden List was telling him he could live forever. Or at least, for 2,000 years. He was beyond excited. Daming, Forbidden City. Immortality. Phoenix blood. Watching the screen, Zhu Yuanzhang looked thoughtful, muttering to himself, could immortality really exist? Tang Dynasty, Li Shimin clenched his fists, a complex mix of emotions in his eyes. He stared at the Tiandao Golden List, then took a deep breath. National Master, could this phoenix truly grant eternal life? That he glanced down at Yuan Tiangang beside him, his voice urgent. Your Majesty, this Kyushu is vast and unknowable. Yuan Tiangang raised a hand, put away his divination tools, and bowed deeply to Li Shimin. Divination has its limits. Kyushu holds secrets we can barely imagine. that despite his enhanced strength and divination skills, thanks to heavenly blessings, Kyushu was full of powerful people he couldn't possibly foresee. All the Qin Zhangtai Palace was eerily silent. Is there really a path to immortality? That the same thought echoed in everyone's minds, including Yingyun. Eternal life. Yingyun had considered seeking the elixir of immortality before, but Yingyun dissuaded him. Besides, immortality seemed elusive, a fantasy, but that didn't mean Yingyun didn't desire it. Phoenix. Yingyun glanced at Su Fu on the screen. Phoenix, and Long Yuan. He glanced at Yingyun, thinking that if the opportunity arose, he might slay the real dragon and save his father. After all, based on his memories of history, the Qin wasn't destined to last. Chapter 57, Slay the Phoenix. The Emperor of the Great Zhou Dynasty is dead. The appearance of the Phoenix had changed everything in Zhou. Grandmasters, powerhouses, none of that mattered as much as immortality. So, few people were interested in recruiting Su Fu. They just needed to know where the Phoenix was. Was there any of the so-called immortality medicine left over? If so, they were willing to pay anything to get it. Even if it meant using force. Grandmasters might be near the top in Kyushu, but they were no match for the might of a dynasty with tens or hundreds of thousands of armored warriors. Faced with the pressure of the major dynasties, even grandmasters would submit. That was the law of Kyushu. No one defied the supreme dynasty. As Kyushu descended into near madness, in the scene on the screen, 2 months had passed. How hard could it be to find a phoenix? Nearly 3 months had passed. Su Fu constantly saw messengers arriving from the Zhou dynasty, practically begging. He was anxious, but what could he do? Finally, the deadline loomed. With only a few days left, Su Fu had a clue to the phoenix. Phoenix Point. The phoenix's lair. Despite the legends of the phoenix and the phoenix tree, this one was hiding in a dark cave. Immediately, Su Fu led his army to the phoenix's location. Phoenix. As the army marched into the cave, everyone in Kyushu finally saw the phoenix. It matched the legends: dragon in front, Lin behind, snake head, fish tail, dragon pattern, turtle body, chicken beak, parallel wings. Its body shone with golden light. Its cry seemed to shake the very heavens. The real phoenix. Everyone in Zhou, from princes to commoners, was awestruck by its beauty. It was surreal. These legendary creatures actually existed. War. As everyone marveled, Su Fu's great Zhou soldiers clashed with the phoenix. Then, everyone saw just how terrifying the Zhou dynasty was, the one that almost unified Kyushu 2,000 years ago. The true uncrowned kings. Its power was incredible. Some believed that if the great Zhou dynasty had continued, even in decline, it might be the current supreme dynasty of Kyushu. Some even wondered, what if Qin, Ming, Han, and the other strongest nations of Kyushu fought the great Zhou? What would happen? But they quickly dismissed the thought. There was no point in comparing. And they were afraid they'd realize they weren't as strong as they were 2,000 years ago. The screen showed more. The great Zhou dynasty was making everyone take notice. But the phoenix wasn't going down easy. Almost instantly, thousands of soldiers were incinerated by the phoenix flame. The scene turned blood red. Screams, wails, the whole picture was like hell on earth. So gruesome, the great Zhou dynasty. Soon, Su Fu led 100,000 soldiers deep into the phoenix's nest and encountered the mythical beast Phoenix, but he suffered a disastrous defeat, and the news of his defeat spread throughout the great Zhou. For a time, it was very popular. On the one hand, those dignitaries and common people in the great Zhou were shocked that there was actually a phoenix. On the other hand, he also had a deep understanding of the power of the phoenix. 100,000 troops can't do anything to him. At this time, the emperor of the great Zhou, who was already terminally ill and dying, issued an imperial decree. Kill the phoenix at all costs. In fact, the emperor of the great Zhou at this moment, because of relying on the rejuvenation pill for many years, his originally healthy body has been completely ruined. In addition, the rejuvenation pill has an addictive component, making this emperor, who has just turned 40, look as old as 70 or 80 years old. And the closer to death, the greater the desire for life. In the heart of this emperor, as long as he kills the phoenix, he can achieve true immortality. At that time, won't everything be solved? Just like that, as the order of the emperor of the Great Zhou fell, the entire behemoth of the Great Zhou moved. Countless warriors, mighty, rushed towards the phoenix's nest. Among them, there are countless acquired and innate masters. There are several first-rate masters. Even, everyone saw one or two masters. Too strong. Everyone in Zhou knows that the Great Zhou, which almost unified the land of Zhou, is absolutely extremely powerful. But I didn't expect it to be so terrifying. And facing this battle of the Great Zhou with all its national strength, even the divine beast Phoenix has its moments of weakness. Chapter 50. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the end, after losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers, including even top-tier martial arts masters, the Zhou dynasty finally managed to kill the phoenix. And Su Fu landed the killing blow. He couldn't help but laugh, standing in the air thick with phoenix blood. He'd finally done it. He wouldn't have to die. Buoyed by his success, Su Fu returned to the capital with an army escort, but before he even arrived, shocking news reached him. The emperor of Zhou was dead. Boom! The emperor's death and the ascension of a new one wasn't exactly good news for Su Fu, who'd been deeply trusted by the old ruler. Even worse, the new emperor issued a decree ordering Su Fu to bring back the phoenix and refine the elixir of immortality. This new emperor was clearly ambitious. He wanted to unify all of Kyushu. Kyushu was vast. Even a martial arts master couldn't travel the entire land in a lifetime. Yet this new emperor wanted to make a play for the whole thing, sweeping across Kyushu and establishing an empire unlike any other. And his first step was immortality. Only with endless time could he plan a unification of that scale. Which put Su Fu and the phoenix blood he carried squarely in the new emperor's sights. Chapter 58, The elixir is refined. Kyushu is shaken. The news shook Kyushu, a sense of dread settled on many faces. The death of the Zhou emperor was bad news for Su Fu, even though Su Fu had been playing the old emperor from day one, especially with that rejuvenation pill, which was basically a death sentence in disguise. Still, everyone in Kyushu had to admit that Su Fu was a smooth talker. He'd managed to keep the old emperor hoping for eternal life right up to the end, and now that the emperor who trusted him was gone, replaced by someone new, even if Su Fu actually made the elixir of immortality, he was as good as dead. Because emperors were suspicious. Once the new ruler got his hands on immortality, he would worry about what would happen if Su Fu cooked up more elixirs for other dynasties in Kyushu. The old emperor wouldn't have cared less. Everyone knew he was a tyrant who guarded the city. All he wanted was to be immortal. The new emperor wasn't like that. Even from those brief glimpses in the heavenly Tao Golden List, his ambition was clear. Once he had immortality, he'd kill Su Fu without a second thought. There were plenty of emperors and dynasties in Kyushu on par with the Great Zhou. Emperors understood each other. Su Fu himself seemed to realize this. He knew the new emperor's character well enough to understand that handing over the elixir would mean his death, and possibly a catastrophe for all of Kyushu. But he also knew that resisting the new emperor was impossible, so, Su Fu returned to the Great Zhou capital with a heavy heart. After meeting the new emperor, Su Fu retreated to his alchemy lab. Even though phoenix blood was powerful enough to grant immortality, no one had ever just drunk it straight, so, to achieve immortality, he had to keep making pills. Su Fu, using descriptions from ancient texts and drawing on his years of research into pharmacology, combined the phoenix blood with rare treasures to start refining the elixir of life. Many of the emperors watching held their breath. They knew Su Fu had to succeed, or he wouldn't have survived for 2,000 years. Still, curiosity got the better of them, and their eyes were glued to Su Fu's every move. Time passed. This was the busiest Su Fu had been since arriving in Zhou. he'd mostly been conning the old emperor, occasionally brewing up those rejuvenation pills. The rest of the time, he did whatever he wanted. Even when searching for the phoenix, he'd coasted, hiding until the end to deliver the final blow. He was the master of taking it easy. He seemed busy, but he was always relaxed. But this time, Su Fu was giving it his all. Finally, after nearly a month of seclusion, he successfully refined a golden elixir. Boom! All of Kyushu erupted. The elixir of immortality. The sight of the golden pill sent shivers down the spines of emperors everywhere. Was this it? Who in Kyushu didn't want immortality? But almost every emperor believed immortality was just a pipe dream, and now, they were seeing it with their own eyes. Immortality existed. Han Dynasty. The elixir of immortality. Liu Bang leaped to his feet, his eyes fixed on the golden pill, his breathing ragged. Immortality. The temptation was overwhelming. Kingdoms. Women. Treasures. None of it mattered next to the prospect of living forever. If he could, Liu Bang would give up the entire Han Dynasty for immortality. Ming Dynasty. Zhu Yuanzhang's face was grave, his heart pounding. He wasn't too worried about death, but if he had the chance to live forever, who would pass that up? Tang Dynasty. A flicker of desire crossed Li Shimon's eyes. He wanted to live forever, too. The elixir of immortality was driving the emperors of Kyushu mad. If it weren't for the 2,000-year gap, they would have sent armies to attack the Tianmen. The temptation of immortality was too great to resist. Qin Dynasty. The Zhangtai Palace was deathly silent. Yingyun said nothing, just stared at the elixir, his eyes betraying his emotions. The reason he'd been so eager to find the elixir in recent years was that the Qin Dynasty had no worthy successors. Aside from Yingyun, the slacker, neither Prince Fusu nor Hu Hai measured up. His other sons weren't up to the task, either. Fusu was fine in most respects, but too obsessed with Confucianism. He was indecisive, not even capable of maintaining the status quo. Yingyun suspected that if he handed the dynasty over to him, he'd try to restore the Zhou. And Hu Hai? A playboy and good for nothing. Truthfully, Yingyun's favorite was still Yingyun. But he was too lazy, and Yingyun feared that he'd become a hands-off leader. Yingyun knew his lazy son was capable of that. For a while, Yingyun had been desperate for immortality. But immortality was nowhere to be found. After a long, fruitless search, and at Yingyun's urging, Yingyun had given up on the idea.